If you don't build a billion company, you're like no one. Every company today is a media company.
A startup that grew into the millions of revenue. What made you leave all of that behind to start something new?
The reason why you're here today and why we're meeting is only because you're doing this.
Meet Luis, a 26-year-old who co-founded Jamie AI from his college room, a startup doing over 4 million in annual recurring revenue. But over a year ago, he decided to leave all of that behind. Starting from zero again, he built opencompany Cloud, a small team generating hundreds of thousands of views, going media first, competing in a $1 trillion market, documenting everything in real time. But what exactly made Luis leave his 8-figure startup? And how is opencompany competing with $1 billion startups? More about that in the video.
What's up, Philip? Welcome to Open Company.
Yesterday I spent, I think, 7 hours on like a 20-second intro for the YouTube video, which is like...
Being a creator is a full-time job.
It can be. It doesn't have to, that's going to be the challenge. All right, thank you, Luis, first of all, for having me on in the office and just showing me around.
Welcome to Berlin, welcome to Open Company, bro. Like, this is a little creative space where everything started, so I'm glad you're here, and thanks for making a trip.
I'm super excited. I mean, you co-founded Jamie AI, an AI note-taking startup that grew into the millions of revenue. What made you leave all of that behind to start something new?
Yeah, so the cool, short journey of Jamie was that with 19, during my first semester at uni, I started this company with my best friend together. And the reason why we started is I always was drawn to building software, working with technology. When I was younger, I was building robots, crafting little side projects, all of that. And to me, starting a product-focused company was the next natural step. I was so inspired by Y Combinator and all the YouTube videos I saw when I was younger. And then we kind of jumped into this adventure, and the first 3 years we made all the mistakes you could make. We crafted in total 3 products that no one really wanted and really used. So it was a really hard time, but eventually we landed on Jamie, which is an AI-based note-taker, which puts privacy first and is also made for in real-person meetings. So we could use it here, have a phone, record a meeting and get great meeting notes without any sacrifice in quality. And after we figured out product market fit, where it was clear where we positioned in the market, how the product works, the good technical ideas, the company was in a decent place. We kind of hit close to the first $1 million in revenue. Everything was growing. I hired a really good head of product and CTO basically, who is now the CTO and running product. And back then I had this feeling I'm not getting up with the same excitement every day anymore. I was really questioning why, because I had this dream of having a startup in Berlin, an office with 10 people, growing fast, really playing the startup journey. And once we hit this point where things really started to work, I lost the excitement. I was like, what is going on here? And one of the main reasons was I figured out by myself I really enjoy crafting from zero. I enjoy coming up with an idea where something doesn't exist yet and then figuring out all the hard things to make something that people then actually click with. That feels like magic in a product sense. And I felt that desire and trusted that desire. It was a 6-month process to kind of figure out with my co-founder, our investors, our team, how a world without Luis in Jamie could look like. But eventually I think succeeded really well. And now it's almost more than 1.5 years ago where I left. Company's still doing really well, really cool team. It's profitable, has more than 20 employees now, a really cool office in Berlin. So really happy with how things went. But yeah, this was eventually just an inner calling to get back to being an artist, crafting in a sense, going from zero.
That's good. That's amazing to hear, because I think nowadays a lot of everybody basically knows that it's important to follow your own path and follow your passion. At least the words are out there. But you don't see a lot of people actually pursuing that, putting their actions where the words are. And it's super interesting to see people like you who went from a successful startup to taking that leap and saying, okay, this is not for me, even though it's successful.
I cannot even tell you intellectually what the reasons were or why it didn't feel that way. It was more of a gut feel. I felt something wasn't right. I wasn't there with the same excitement and energy every day and let's go, And when this is missing, I trusted that gut feel, which leads you into uncertainty. I didn't know what is next. I took a few months of traveling after, just figuring out what I want to do. I love crafting music, producing music. I love writing. I'm writing my first book right now. I love doing also video stuff and also crafting other side projects, right? I didn't really know where it took me, so I just trusted that gut feel that something didn't feel quite right. But it's really hard. It takes a lot of courage, I think, to trust this intuition.
100%. I mean, that also takes me to the next question, which is, Jamie AI grew to over 50,000 users in dozens of countries. What did Jamie teach you about distribution and getting your first user and getting your projects up and running? and how did you translate that into building your other ventures like Open Company?
So the first thing, product market fit is everything. And most people say they have product market fit, but they don't. And a lot of founders, also in Europe especially, scale things that should not be scaled yet. I think you really need to hit a sweet spot where there's something unique about a product where people click with, where you really know who is using it, why they're using it, and how they get something magical out of it, where they really say after the first few times when they use it, like, wow, this is incredible. And when you don't have this natural state or point in your company or in your product, I think all the scaling and growth efforts are actually pointless because they cancel out to zero eventually. Because someone tries it to get revenue in the first month or second month, but then they churn, you have really bad retention, like there's no point in scaling. Retention is more important than the acquisition in the early days, right? In terms of distribution, I think the important thing we learned there was that the main growth channel in the beginning was SEO. So we wrote a lot of long-tail SEO articles to rank for keywords like AI note taker, or how do I take notes in finance, or like these sort of questions. And these people who are looking for these words likely are already looking for a solution in the AI note taking market, and showing up in that moment where someone is intentionally looking for something is like the best way you can get customers, right? Because you don't need to convince them of, hey, this is the thing you need, they already know they need it. So I think this was the biggest hack in the beginning, or the best bet in the beginning. A lot of people with SEO are sometimes a bit hesitant because I think it's a long-term game, we cannot really rank, whatever. But to be honest, from our experience, we really crushed it there, especially Leo, one of the guys from our team. And in 3 months already, we had like consistent signups every week through SEO. So this was probably the best distribution bet we made early on.
It's super interesting to see because what you went through with Jamie is basically kind of the, nowadays people will call it like the boring art of marketing and distribute your product through SEO or geo, and like the classic like getting recognized through search engines. But now you switch to kind of a way more media focused distribution with Open Company. I mean, your Open Company content is not your typical SaaS marketing, I'd say. You go around, you do founders interviews, you do hackathons, you do behind the scenes in the Silicon Valley, you talk to a lot of exciting people. And my question would be, what is your actual distribution playbook with that?
I don't know if I would call it playbook yet, because for a playbook it needs to be verified with evidence, and it needs to be a clear thing you can replicate and say, hey, this works for this case, and you can just go ahead and execute. Similar to kind of the decision when I left Jamie operationally, was a gut feel. I kind of saw that so much attention is going on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok. If you look at the average person, no matter whether in a job, in a B2B environment, or just like some student, they spend so much time on these networks, and this is sort of where people also discover new things, right? A lot of the technologies I am using now, I learned through some coding channels that I'm following for many years already, and this is sort of how I think attention has also moved in the market. So to me, it was just like a gut feel. Also, I heard it from Gary Vaynerchuk, like many years ago. He said like, every company today is a media company, and it sort of stuck with me. And I always had this desire to also do content, because I think it's actually fun to kind of craft a story that is compelling to some people, that can inspire some people. And also back at university, a few of my kind of friends and colleagues in uni told me like they found it very inspirational how Benedict and I kind of built our company. And also this inspiration aspect, I think, is really powerful. It's a big gift you can give to the world. So our intention with being like a really content-focused company on the distribution side for now is primarily just trying it out. I think a strong brand is a big differentiator down the line. Now that everyone can craft a product in a few days that looks sort of decent, you need to figure out where's your differentiation. And if you think about distribution, a big part of it is also customer relationships. With Jamie, we onboarded the first 1,000 users personally. Wow. We did 1,000 calls with people, 15 minutes short, you know, just saying, hey, this is what you can use it for. If you have any questions, let me know. It's an early product, like let's work together. And these relationships proved extremely valuable, because then people kind of emailed us more when there were bugs, or kind of suggested better feature ideas. They helped us then talk about the product with their friends, for example, because they said like, hey, I know this guy from Jamie, I talked to them, right? So this makes them more like of an evangelist, I would say, who is kind of more connected with your brand. I think the same is true also for content. It just scales differently. I cannot do 1,000 calls right now. I need to focus on product. But what we can do is create a video that might be seen by a few thousands of people. And this way they already have this connection, right? And this also helps you to inject yourself into the conversation in different aspects. So for now, this is sort of our belief that we need a strong brand to reach the right people. Whether this converts into actual growth, we are yet to find out. But my bet is, and my suspicion is very strongly yes. The other thing I can already tell you, it's a big help in fundraising and in talent acquisition. You know, if someone, we had a few people who approached us, they found what we do, they kind of followed our journey a bit, they're texting us like every other week. There's like a bunch of people who kind of reach out and say, hey, can I work for you? Like this is what I do, whatever. And there's some really cool people, and especially as there's so many options now for young people to kind of do things, pursue careers, or join other companies. I think it's cool if they click with you on a personal level also, and we try to also convey that in the videos.
And that's also the reason why I texted you guys.
Actually, isn't that cool? Like,
It was super interesting. I saw your videos back when you were in Cape Town doing Acta, like a previous project of yours. So that's super interesting, and I think you're spot on. I mean, I saw the Gary V clip as well. I think it's super viral, the classic. I mean, he called it years before people eventually hopped on that trend of it's actually a media company. But it's also really, for me, what really struck with me is that you said you onboarded the first 1,000 users by yourself, which is something that you rarely hear, I think, from a lot of startup founders. It's super interesting. Was it just you and your co-founder, or how many people actually hopped on these calls?
The co-founder, I was still in product, so I did like a few onboardings a week, but the majority were from Benny and Leo, the first few guys basically in the team. And they did most of the calls, and yeah, it was really useful. I would not change it. We're doing it the same way now again. Like, you go through the onboarding, you can just get started. However, in the onboarding step, in the last step, we say like, hey, book a call with us. We'd love to kind of show you more what we do, get your feedback, this sort of things, because this really helps you to create a human connection also with your customers, who then eventually become your fans, which then tell your friends, which is then even the biggest growth lever, right? If people start talking about you word of mouth, it's hard to measure, it's hard to force, but this is something that contributes, I think, to people then naturally talking about what you do. Another note I wanted to add on content. A lot of times in Silicon Valley especially, you hear this notion of you should increase your surface area of luck. Because a lot of stuff when a company works out is luck in a way. Yeah, I met this person 5 years ago that then ends up becoming your co-founder or CTO, or you met this person a few years ago and this guy then becomes your investor. These sort of lucky moments are really defining for a lot of companies. And through this content thing, I feel like we're also increasing our surface area of luck quite a bit. So this is another argument I would make for making content early on. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's partially the reason, or a lot of the reasons why I'm doing this, is to just increase my surface luck area. It's like you have basically nothing to lose with putting yourself out there, except like the fear of being judged by others and like the cringe factor, and the upside is endless. Like the possibilities that could come out of this.
And to add to that, like the reason why you're here today and why we're meeting is only because you're doing this. Because right now I'm declining all of the meetings. I'm getting in, whether it's investors or other people who want to work with us, because I need to focus so hard on our product. And one of the reasons why we're doing it is because, you know, this video thing has leverage. Someone out there might be viewing that and is interested in joining our company as an engineer or something else. And like this is a great, I would say also like, not shortcut, but like a door opener to meet a lot of really impressive people. Not saying that I'm impressive, but like...
No, totally. I appreciate it. That's the name of the game, just trying and getting it out there. It's also for, I think nowadays online you see a lot of young founders chasing money, chasing status, and the idea of being a founder. And in addition to that, a lot of people claim that you have to go to San Francisco to make it as a founder. You've been to San Francisco for the last couple of months. What did San Francisco actually do for you? And what do you think most founders misunderstand?
So it's a two-part question. I start with San Francisco. I think the main benefit we got from it is really getting a feel for what it means to move really fast and work really hard. Like the people there are really locked in and they really push fast. And this gives you a reality check for the benchmark who you're competing against. Because especially if you're building a tech and for a global audience or like for some segment which, you know, exists in many countries, you're always in competition with the rest of the world. And if in SF people work 10% faster every single day, this compounds so much that you have no chance of winning. And this gives you like a real reality check of how fast people actually move. And speed is probably also the number one factor for the success of any venture or thing that you're doing in a competitive market. So this was one thing for sure that I think was useful. The other, I mean, in SF, there's like, I think 25% of global venture capital distributed or sits in SF in like a radius of a few kilometers, which is incredible. And especially if you think about downstream rounds that you want to do. For us, I mean, we are now, we raised our first little pre-seed round. Obviously, there will be a seed round or Series A round coming up at some point. And building these connections early on with investors and the crowd there is extremely useful. And everyone in SF is extremely useful. Like you can talk to people, ask for help. They're more than often really down to just, you know, help just for the sake of it, which is a really cool spirit they have in SF, and that really stands out, which you don't get to that extent in Europe or in other communities from my experience. So this was also a good thing to kind of inject your name there. I would say the third one is also that it urges you to think bigger. If you talk to people like, if you don't build a billion company, you're like no one, right? Which sounds insane to the German mind, but in SF it's just the most normal thing ever. And getting kind of this eye-opening experience that people really think this big and kind of say, how can I take more risk? How can I go more aggressive? How can I go more ambitious with the vision that we're going after is really motivating and touches me a lot. Second question was kind of what founders get wrong.
It was a two-part question. The second one is like the online you see a lot of founders that chase money, chase status, and the idea of being a founder. And my question would just be for you, for your experience. You talk to a lot of founders, you talk to millionaires and even billionaires. What do all these founders kind of misunderstand in that conception? Or do you think that's the right path for some people?
To me, I always try to optimize around my life success in the sense of happiness, fulfillment. Do I feel excited? Do I feel grateful every day to wake up? Do I feel like I'm playing in a way, right? Like, does life feel nice to me? And a lot of people I see have a self-image of them that they want to pursue. I want to be this founder guy because then I make money, I get status, I get women maybe, or attraction in some way. You know, it's an honest motivation for many people out there. But truthfully, that's the only thing that kind of draws them to it, this self-image that they're chasing. I think the best people that also I click with the most, also in San Francisco, and I say there's a lot of these people also in San Francisco, but the best people I think are doing it for the right reasons, for the sake of it, because there's something that draws them to the act of creation, to the act of serving a customer, to the act of bringing a new technology to market in a cool way that kind of clicks with people. And I think this is the more truthful, genuine intention for creating a company. And if you're someone who enjoys crafting a product, figuring out what someone kind of is struggling with in a day, and then come up with cool ways to solve this, then maybe a company is the natural second order effect of how you pursue that thing. But it's not the thing you start with. I think Peter Thiel also talks about this a lot, where if your prime intention is just to start a company for the sake of starting a company, you're already lost in a way, because you're not set up, I think, for asymmetric success, which is beyond, you know, the average success that you might see. So I think this is kind of the biggest thing. And also in SF, not everyone is pure in that sense and really doing it for the sake of it, right? Many are also just chasing status, cloud, money, you know, recognition, and that's fine. But at the same time, I think it's important to really check in with yourself and become self-aware of why you're doing the thing that you're doing, and this should inform sort of how you make your life decisions.
I think it's also really hard to compete with people who actually enjoy it. Like in terms of consistency, being faceted and actually working it every day for a longer period of time, like longer than a year, it's super hard to compete with people who actually love it.
If someone, you know, if work feels like play to you, that's the state you should chase, right? To me, like crafting right now, opencompany, really going deep into the code, into the product, is so much fun to me. Like, I really enjoy thinking about these problems, like how do you make the user experience a bit better? Like, what are fundamental design decisions? All these sort of questions, and yeah, it's hard to compete against someone who kind of treats work like play and feels like to them like this genuinely.
Awesome. That perfectly brings me kind of to my last question, which is you built or you co-founded an 8-figure company, and you left all of that behind just to start new. And my idea in this whole journey of yours, my question would be, what's one belief about success at a young age that turned out to be completely wrong?
Completely wrong. Wow. I can give you the one that I think is really right and important, which is also the ethos of why we started Acta, which was this venture studio we did before. I deeply believe that if young people follow their early inclinations, so their early interests, curiosities, gifts, things they're good at that they're naturally drawn to, maybe even at a kid age, and follow that, and everyone would do that, we would live in a world full of geniuses. Because eventually I think everyone has some sort of inner genius in them, but it might be very different, right? So if you're as a kid drawn to kind of really being active, being outside, kind of being with people, and you know it was like, hey, you love coaching like sports teams or something that way, I would lean into that no matter what society, your parents, friends, or other people are telling you in terms of expectations. And this is sort of the one thing I would tell everyone, to kind of lean into your early inclinations, to the early things that kind of you're drawn to naturally, because this is probably where your happiest life lives, where your best contribution to the world lives, and also where you will do your best work in a sense, right? So this is sort of the thing I would always encourage people to kind of trust more.
I think nowadays it's so much easier to encourage people to do that too, because with content, with AI, with all these tools out there, you basically have unlimited possibilities, and you can do, I love to say the phrase, you can do whatever the fuck you want. And I think you can make a living off of basically any hobby you have. You just have to have the grit and the conviction to follow that path and enjoy the ride. Yeah. So that's an amazing advice. Thank you so much for the interview. It was really great.
Thanks for dropping by, man. All the best.
To get all these insights. Thank you.
Let me know.